Study Session 10, the 1999 Constitution and the Fourth Republic. Introduction. As noted in the previous study session, the botched political transition program initiated by the Babangida military regime put an abrupt end to the Third Republic project that the 1989 Constitution was set to serve. The events that followed are significant to the understanding of Nigeria's constitutional development in the post-Babangida era. In this study session, you will be exposed to the major events that happened after the aborted Third Republic, which culminated in the making as well as the promulgation of the 1999 Constitution. You will also explore the 1999 Constitution, which serves as the legal framework in the current political dispensation in Nigeria, popularly referred to as the Fourth Republic. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this study session, you should be able to point out the major events that shaped Nigeria's constitutional development, particularly after the aborted Third Republic, highlight significant changes introduced by the 1999 Constitution, and discuss some of the merits and demerits of the 1999 Constitution. Background to the making of the 1999 Constitution. The political crisis that followed the annulment of the June 12 presidential election made Nigeria become ungovernable under the Babangida military administration. This partly explained why the president had to step aside exactly 8 years after he came to power on the 27th of August 1993. Before President Babangida left office, he instituted an interim national government, ING, led by Chief Ernest Shonekan. This government faced a lot of problems as a result of absence of popular support and resistance from the opposition groups that demanded for the actualization of June 12 presidential election and installation of Chief MKO Abiola, the presumed winner of the election, as the President of Nigeria. The legitimacy crisis faced by the regime reached a climax when a federal high court in Lagos declared it unconstitutional. After 3 months of political tumult, another military officer, General Sani Abacha, the Minister of Defense, took over the reins of power and installed himself as the head of state on the 17th of November 1993. Immediately after his military regime was enthroned, General Sani Abacha started a clampdown on every opposition. This was done to suppress the June 12 insurrection and any move that might lead to his removal as the head of state. Though, as mentioned earlier, the 1989 Constitution was not allowed to operate, there was an attempt by the Abacha military regime to make another constitution that would usher in another republic. The regime took the first step at constitution making by instituting the National Constitutional Conference Commission in January 1994, which organized election into the Constitutional Conference. By June 27, 1994, General Sani Abacha inaugurated the conference in spite of the wide criticisms from the Nigerian populace. The conference produced a draft constitution in 1995, which was not debated nor ratified by the representatives of the people. Nevertheless, the constitution provided the bedrock for the political transition program adopted by the Abacha military regime. Some of the far-reaching changes recommended in the 1995 draft constitution that are still points of reference in the contemporary Nigeria's constitutional history include the following. 1. The division of the country into 6 geopolitical zones for the purpose of power sharing, particularly at the federal level. The 6 zones include North Central (NC) with the zonal headquarters at Jos, Plateau State. Northeast (NE) with zonal headquarters at Maiduguri, Borno State. Northwest (NW) with zonal headquarters at Kaduna, Kaduna State. Southeast SE Zone with the zonal headquarters at Enugu, Enugu State. South-South SS Zone with the zonal headquarters at Port Harcourt, Rivers State. And Southwest SW Zone with the zonal headquarters at Ibadan, Oyo State. 2. The introduction of rotational power sharing formula for the offices of the President, Vice President, the Speaker of the House of Representatives and Senate President, Deputy Speaker and Deputy Senate Leader. In other words, the offices are to be shared and rotated among the 6 geopolitical zones. It is significant to point out that this formula, upon its adoption, was domesticated at both state and local government levels. 3. The establishment of Federal Character Commission and the composition of the Federal Cabinet in proportion to the votes won by each political party at the polls. The Constitutional Conference that made these suggestions attempted to evolve a true federalism. Besides, the conference called for the termination of military rule by 1996. This call garnered much impetus from the people. On the basis of the draft constitution of 1995, Abacha announced a transition program for the restoration of democratic governance by October 1998. To effect this transition program, the Abacha military regime put in place 2 agencies under its supervision. These agencies are 1. The Transition Implementation Commission, and 2. The National Electoral Commission of Nigeria, NECON. Although elections were conducted into local government councils nationwide, and the same happened in respect of state houses of assembly as well as National Assembly, none of these bodies was allowed to operate. The wanton desire of General Sani Abacha to succeed himself and the war declared against the opposition groups led to grave violation of human rights and the consequent international sanctions. Nigeria was almost turned into a pariah state as a result of this. For instance, Nigeria was suspended from the British Commonwealth of Nations, and there were a series of economic sanctions from different countries of the world. Before the sudden death of General Abacha on the 8th of June 1998, his regime created 6 additional states, namely Bayelsa in the south-south, Ebonyi in the southeast, Ekiti in the southwest, Zamfara in the northwest, Gombe in the northeast, and Nasarawa in the north-central in 1996. It was also under his regime that 5 political parties were formed. It was on the platform of those parties that elections were conducted. These parties include United Nigeria Congress Party (UNCP), the Grassroots Democratic Movement (GDM), the Democratic Party of Nigeria (DPN), National Center Party of Nigeria (NCPN), and Congress of National Consensus (CNC). As I told you earlier, this is a deviation from the two-party system instituted by the 1989 Constitution. These parties were dissolved as soon as the head of states, the only presidential candidate endorsed by all the parties, died. As soon as General Abdulsalam Abubakar was sworn in to take over from late General Abacha, he announced a new transitional program drawn to terminate on the 29th of May, 1999. As part of its transition program, the new military administration decided to draw and launch a new constitution, organize free and fair elections, redeem the battered international image of the country, and bring out national reconciliation. The Abubakar-led administration scrapped the existing political parties referred to as the Five Fingers on a Leprous Hand, cancelled the controversial local government, state, and National Assembly elections, and released many political detainees. The regime also established a new electoral body, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, headed by Ephraim Akpata. A 23-member Constitution Debate Coordinating Committee, CDCC, headed by Justice Nikki Toby, was inaugurated to debate on the 1995 draft constitution. The report of this committee formed the basis on which the 1999 constitution was made in 1998 to usher in the Fourth Republic. Major features of the 1999 Republican Constitution. This constitution was arranged in sections, parts, and chapters. Chapter 1 on general provisions consists of two parts. Part 1 makes provisions for the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and it has 3 sections, sections 1 to 3, while Part 2 deals with the powers of the Federation, and it consists of sections 4 to 12. In Chapter 2, there are provisions for the fundamental objectives and directive principles of state policy, consisting of 12 sections. The Chapter 3 of the 1999 Constitution deals with the issue of citizenship, and it is divided into 8 sections. Chapter 4 makes provisions for the fundamental rights of the citizens and has 14 sections. Chapter 5 of the 1999 Constitution contains provisions on the legislature, the national and state legislatures. It is divided into 2 parts. While Part 1, sections 47 to 89, deals with composition and staff of the National Assembly, procedure for summoning and dissolution of the Assembly, qualifications for membership of the National Assembly, and right of attendance, elections into the Assembly, and powers and control over public funds. Part 3, sections 90 to 129, deals with the same issues for the House of Assembly of each state in the Nigerian Federation. In Chapter 6, constitutional provisions are made for both the federal executive and the state executive in two parts consisting of 100 sections. The Part 1 deals with the provisions for the President of the Federation, establishment of certain federal executive bodies, public revenue, and the public service of the Federation. The Part 2 makes provisions for the governor of a state, establishment of certain state executive bodies, and the public service of a state. The Judicature is the title of the 7th chapter of the 1999 Constitution, which makes provisions for the federal courts, state courts, and election tribunals, as well as supplementary provisions on jurisdiction of state courts in respect of federal causes, enforcement of decisions, appointment and disqualification of certain legal practitioners, among others. These provisions run from Section 230 to Section 296. Chapter 8 of the Constitution is set aside for the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and general supplementary provisions, and it is divided into 4 parts and 24 sections, that is, sections 297 to 320. In addition to the 320 sections, there are 7 schedules containing provisions for special items and issues in the 1999 Constitution. The first schedule consists of lists of existing states of the Federation with their respective local government areas and the definition and area councils of Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The second schedule has 3 parts containing exclusive legislative lists, concurrent legislative lists, and supplementary provisions and interpretation. The third schedule contains provisions on federal executive bodies, state executive bodies, and Federal Capital Territory, Abuja Executive Body. While the fourth schedule provides a list of functions of a local government council, the fifth schedule contains Code of Conduct for public officers and public officers for the purposes of the Code of Conduct. The sixth schedule and seventh schedule deal with election tribunal and oaths, respectively. As you were told in study session 3, the common pattern of most constitutions, often referred to as the scope or the substance of a constitution, includes a preamble, structure of government, procedure for amendment, distribution of power, and the rights of the citizens. These are the main features of a modern constitution. We are going to examine these features one after the other with respect to the 1999 Constitution. The preamble. Although there is no specific section or part for the preamble, as you were told that it is the introductory part of the Constitution, it reveals the source and the basic ideals that the Constitution rests on. In the 1999 Constitution, the preamble reads thus: "We, the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity and harmony as one indivisible and indissoluble sovereign nation under God, dedicated to the promotion of inter-African solidarity, world peace, international cooperation and understanding, and to provide for a constitution for the purpose of promoting the good governance and welfare of all persons in our country on the principles of freedom, equality, and justice, and for the purpose of consolidating the unity of our people, do hereby make, enact, and give ourselves the following Constitution. There are lots of negative comments on this preamble, all indicating that it is a blatant lie against the Nigerian people. The Constitution was made by those who were selected by the military regime and approved and enacted by a decree promulgated by the Provisional Ruling Council (PRC) under the General Abubakar-led military administration, as earlier indicated. For example, Chief F.R.A. Williams described the 1999 Constitution as a fraudulent document. Read Oyeleye, 2007, page 58. The structure of government. The Constitution provides for a presidential system of government and a federal structure that recognizes the central, state, and local governments. According to Section 2, subsection 2, Nigeria shall be a federation consisting of states and a federal capital territory. The 36 states that are constitutionally recognized are listed in the Section 3 of the Constitution. In addition, Section 3, subsection 6, recognizes 768 local government areas and 6 area councils in the Federal Capital Territory. The list of these local and area councils can be respectively found in Part 1 and Part 2 of the first schedule of the Constitution. In short, the Nigerian Federation under the 1999 Constitution has 812 formal governmental units. To further establish the federal structure in Nigeria, Section 318 defines government as including the government of the Federation or of any state or of a local government council or any person who exercises power or authority on its behalf. The Constitution provides for a president for the Federation who shall be the head of state, the chief executive of the Federation, and commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the Federation. See Section 130. In the same vein, Section 176 makes provision for each state of the Federation a governor who is regarded as the chief executive of the state. The qualification for election, tenure of office, and disqualifications of the president and governor are stipulated in the Constitution. Also, the Constitution gives recognition to 3 branches or organs of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. The distribution of governmental powers. The powers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, according to the 1999 Constitution, are shared among the 3 organs of government mentioned above. These organs are established to exercise these constitutional powers at the federal and state levels and implicitly at the local government level. The legislative powers at the federal level are vested in the National Assembly, consisting of a Senate and a House of Representatives. Unlike the bicameral legislature at the center, each state has a House of Assembly vested with the legislative powers at the state level. Mainly, these legislatures are empowered by the Constitution, among other things, to make laws for the peace, order, and good government, both at the federal and state levels. The executive powers at the federal and state levels are respectively vested in the elected president and governor. Meanwhile, according to Section 6, the judicial powers are vested in those courts recognized by the Constitution. Not unlike the federal constitutions, there are provisions for legislative powers shared among the federating units in the 1999 Constitution. There are two legislative lists: exclusive legislative lists and concurrent legislative lists. As you were told earlier, the exclusive list contains items on which only federal legislature in Nigeria, for example, the National Assembly, can legislate. In the 1999 Constitution, this list consists of 68 items. These include accounts of the government of the Federation, arms, ammunition and explosives, defense, currency, coinage and legal tender, customs and excise duties, banks, creation of states, military external affairs, pensions, police and other government security services established, etc. The concurrent list includes items that both federal and state legislatures have the power to legislate on. In case of any inconsistency between the laws made by the Senate Assembly and National Assembly on any of the items, the federal laws shall by virtue of that inconsistency become valid. The list contains 12 items, including archives, antiquities, university or technological and post-primary education, industrial, commercial and agricultural development, electoral law, and so on. It is important to point out to you that the Nigerian Federation is over-centralized, going by the power distribution between the major component units of the Federation. The fundamental rights of the citizens. The 1999 Constitution, in its Chapter 4, provides for the rights that should be enjoyed by the people and be protected by the Nigerian government. The Constitution stipulates that every person has a right to life, right to dignity of human person, right to personal liberty, right to fair hearing, right to private and family life, right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion, right to freedom of expression and the press, right to peaceful assembly and association, right to freedom of movement, right to freedom from discrimination, and right to acquire and own immovable property anywhere in Nigeria. In case of infringement on any of these rights, Section 46 provides for special jurisdiction of High Court and legal aid. In a related manner, the Constitution affirms that the Federal Republic of Nigeria shall be a state based on the principle of democracy and social justice. That is found in Section 14. This provision was supposed to galvanize the protection of the above-mentioned rights and freedom. Procedure for amendment. You were told in study session 2 of this course that one of the criteria used to classify modern constitutions is the ease with which the constitution can be amended. This, as mentioned earlier, helps us to classify a constitution as either flexible or rigid. The 1999 Constitution, like other precedent constitutions, makes provision for the mode of altering or amending provisions of the Constitution. According to Section 9, the National Assembly may, subject to provisions of this section, alter any of the provisions of this Constitution. In spite of the power of amendment given to the federal legislature, the approval of the act for the alteration of the Constitution is not guaranteed unless the proposal is supported by votes of at least two-thirds majority of all members of each House of National Assembly and approved by resolution of the Houses of Assembly of not less than two-thirds of all the states. This involves a lot of processes and activities that should be initiated and guided by Nigerian legislative houses. Thus, the Constitution is rigid in terms of amendment procedures. The merits and demerits of the 1999 Constitution. The 1999 Constitution, notwithstanding the observed flaws and criticisms leveled against it and its drafters, provides a legal and constitutional framework in this new political dispensation dubbed as the Fourth Republic. With the adoption of the presidential system of government, there is room for individual and not collective responsibility for good or bad deeds done while in office, especially by the elected president or governor. As indicated earlier, the Constitution makes provision for amendment which makes it possible for people to demand for constitutional reform. You should know that the ongoing constitutional reform in the country is premised on this provision. The Constitution has been described as lacking in process and content. First and foremost, the 1999 Constitution was imposed by the interim government led by Abubakar and was an amended version of the previous one, which was made under another military regime. The opinion of many Nigerians was that the Constitution was not rooted in the will of the people. It was argued that even if the Constitution was legal, it lacked legitimacy, as it failed to take the wishes and aspirations of the people into consideration. This is according to Ibuzo, 2002, page 17. The Constitution was also criticized on the ground that it promoted unitarism as a federal system. For example, the federal government appoints both federal and state judicial officers. The language in the Constitution is gender biased, and it is written in legal language, which is inelegantly drafted, making it hard for ordinary people to understand it, and which further gives room for many devious interpretations. In addition, issues of revenue generation and sharing, as well as secularity, are not adequately addressed. The Constitution is very weak on the issue of human rights and the guarantee of socio-economic rights. Furthermore, it did not properly address how to put the army under civilian control, and the autonomy of the local governments are not constitutionally guaranteed. Furthermore, Oyeleye Oyediran adds, the structures set out by the 1999 Constitution are strongly criticized. The institution is said to provide the shortest cut to dictatorship. It does not give room for a decentralized state. Study session summary. In this study session, we have discussed the events that constituted the background to the 1999 Constitution in Nigeria. We mentioned how the military president, General Badamasi Babangida, handed over power ingloriously to the interim national government led by Chief Ernest Shonekan. 3 months later, General Sani Abacha took over power from interim national government. After Abacha's death in June 1998, General Abdulsalam Abubakar replaced him. It was the latter that reviewed and amended the 1995 draft constitution. The amended version formed the foundation of the 1999 constitution. In this study session, we have noted that the 1999 constitution, promulgated by General Abubakar Regime, was written and organized in chapters, parts, and sections. The 320 sections and 7 schedules of the Constitution provided for a preamble, the structure of government, the distribution of powers, fundamental rights, and procedures for amendment. It adopts federalism and presidential system of government. One of the merits of the Constitution, apart from providing a legal or constitutional framework for the present political dispensation, is the adoption of the presidential system of government that gives room for individual and not collective responsibility for good or bad deeds done while in office, especially by the elected president or governor. Nevertheless, the 1999 Constitution has faced strong criticisms from many sources, including the president, legislators, among other officials elected under it. The Constitution has also been criticized on the ground of lacking in process and content. End of study session 10. Thanks for listening.